Deep breath and you just get on when you're ready.
Okay, I would like to ask everybody to think of their favorite superhero, whether it's a movie, comic book, or maybe a TV show. Have you ever wondered where that hero came from? What history and time, like what part of time it came into, why it was introduced, and how it affected the general population? Well, today I'm going to talk about the gold, silver, bronze, and modern age of comic books, and the heroes within them. Now, you all may be thinking of different heroes involving from Marvel Comics to DC Comics, or you may not be thinking of heroes because you're like, what is a hero? I don't know. But I grew up idolizing these people. I always wanted to help people, and I would hope one day to have the super strength or super speed, or just the money of some people, like Bruce Wayne, who is Batman, to help people. Okay. So it all started with Action Comics #1, which was released in 1938, which is the first introduction of Superman, one of my favorite superheroes that I've always idolized. It was introduced by Detective Comics, which is a part of Action Comics, which you know as DC Comics. Later on, in 1939, Timely Comics was created, and which in the future they will become Marvel Comics, but at the moment right now they're known as Timely. 1939, Batman was introduced after, people think that Batman was introduced first for DC, but it was actually Superman, which I found interesting. And Batman, when he was first introduced, actually killed people. So people know the myth of Batman and how he doesn't kill, he actually killed, which was awesome. And also, along with Batman, a year later, in 1940, no, 2 years later, Wonder Woman was introduced, and along with Captain America, which both helped in the war effort, getting young people to form. Part of it was introduced in Victory Gardens, or just inform them about the war effort. And as you can see here, the one of Captain America's famous covers is him punching Hitler, and I thought that was just a great explanation of how people needed to be informed about the war effort. But sadly, once the war was over, comics sales declined greatly, and a lot of superheroes comics were canceled. So many superheroes you probably don't know today because they were never brought back, which is very sad. But thankfully, it was not over, and then we were ushered into the Silver Age of comics. Now, the Silver Age is kind of like a revitalization or recreation of previous Golden Age superheroes. So there you have, on this side, is Earth 2, Barry Allen. He's the new Flash that was introduced in the Silver Age. And this is his original counterpart, Jay Garrick, in the Golden Age. This is Hal Jordan. He was, Silver Age, Green Lantern. And this is Alan Scott, which is Golden Age Green Lantern. Now, as you can see, they did have different suits and different aliases, which signifies the revitalization and recreation. An interesting fact is that they both have different origins. These two got their speed differently, and the Green Lantern is some alien race that protects the universe, and his Green Lantern he made out of some random stone, and he actually has a weakness to wood, which was hilarious. And so once those were introduced, they started forming teams. The Justice League of America was created. As you know, I'm sure some of you grew up watching it on Cartoon Network, and it's now on Netflix. So if you want to go back and check it out, Justice League of America is on Netflix, and I believe they show it sometime on the Saturday morning cartoon. And it's just those comic book stories into TV shows for kids, which again I grew up idolizing that show. And then in the Silver Age, Timely Comics finally became Marvel, the Marvel you know today. And they hired one of the kids that was working in the writer's box creating stories and drawing was a man known as Stan Lee. I'm sure you've all heard of him. But he helped bring about Marvel's fighting chance against DC with the Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, Thor, Hulk, Iron Man, and the X-Men. The X-Men kind of a partial answer to the Justice League, having a superhero team up for Marvel. Then, as you all know, Avengers came up in 1963, but the original members that are shown in the movies were not the original members then. Later on, the year the original members joined in 1965 was Iron Man, Hulk, Captain America, and the Scarlet Witch, Vision, and Ant-Man, or Giant Man, if you prefer. But along with new heroes became new stories and darker stories. And people started to feel that the darker stories brought about juvenile delinquency, which was kind of bogus if you ask me. But they introduced the Comic Book Code Authority, which reduced the amount of content they could put into the stories. It was kind of like a rating, like a parental guide. And so a lot of content that they wanted to release was not able to release, so they couldn't really put out as much stories as they'd like to. So again, comic book sales started to fall. But the stranglehold of the Comic Book Authority reduced, and we're ushered into the Bronze Age. Now, the Bronze Age can be partially split up into a darkening of comic books. If you saw in the previous picture, it had a little partial timeline, but it kind of goes into two of them, so I won't leave that out. But the beginning was an example with Gwen Stacy's Spider-Man's girlfriend's death, which was portrayed in the Amazing Spider-Man 2 in 2014, which partially Green Goblin threw her off of a tower and Spider-Man caught her, but sadly snapped her neck. So you have guilt within the character, and it shows, and he starts to go a little bit crazy. So it's more mature, in-depth content than what was usually introduced in the Silver Age previously. So with that being said, there was more on the DC side. Alan Moore created the Watchmen, which was set in the Cold War times, which it was like a failing world where governments were fighting each other and people were fighting each other, and they needed to develop a plan for world peace. Sadly, if you saw the movie, it involved a lot of death. But it was portrayed differently in the comic books. The comic book had alien race, and the movie had an explosion. But they're both great reads and great movies. But this actual story made it to Time Magazine's top 100 books in 2005, and it's the only comic book to do so. So that shows you right there how great of a story it is. But as you can see, yeah, the heroes right here, but most of them die, which is really sad later on. But I highly recommend the stories. But the dark and gritty and art culture of the Bronze Age kind of overflows into now what is known as the modern age, which is the age we live in. And you've probably seen some products of the modern age where are there a great amount of movies being produced, with the Avengers and the soon to come out Justice League, and the Iron Man, Wolverine, Captain America, Hulk, and the Flash TV show, Netflix original series with Luke Cage, Daredevil, and Jessica Jones, and the Defenders, which is also another great one. But this time period of modern age doesn't look like it's ending soon, but I really do look forward to a new age and seeing the innovations they have for comic books, because this is what I grew up with. And with this happening in the beginning of the modern age, the comic books were failing somehow. I was kind of confused on really why. But DC, which was Justice League, was bought out by Warner Brothers Production, and Marvel was bought out by Disney. Fun fact, Marvel produced Star Wars comic books, so they're redoing it now. So it's kind of funny that Disney's like revamping it and bringing it back to the original roots of Star Wars comic books. So with all this, there's going to be many more movies because there's so many stories that they want to do, and now they have Disney's money and Warner Brothers money to back it up. So there'll be some great movies coming out. And I want to leave you today. I want to leave you today with a quote by Stan Lee from the Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man 3 with Tobey Maguire. Enough said. Thank you.
Thank you. Bingo. Oh, Jason's bingo.
No, finally got it to work.
Okay.
I've never printed off a web print, so I'm like, what am I doing?
Okay.
Oh, I got it.
Jason, you want to go?
No, I didn't. Let's go.
Okay, it's gonna, because I don't want to be here all night, like I literally don't want to be here all night. It's gonna go Bean,
Okay, fair
Jason, Rodrigo, Louisa, Zachary. We're done. Well, I said if you guys could stay late, like I personally don't want to be here all night.